At 11:47 p.m., a phone call captured words that would seal a man's fate forever. Behind the doors of $1 million Utah home, love, betrayal, and greed collided. What unfolded was not just a murder, but a calculated plan that destroyed an entire family. On the surface, Matthew Johnson and Jennifer Gledhill seemed to embody the American dream. He was a decorated Green Beret, a devoted father, and a respected member of the Utah National Guard. She was the doting wife and mother of their 3 young children. Together, they lived in a pristine home in Cottonwood Heights, a quiet, affluent neighborhood where nothing bad was supposed to happen. Friends described Matthew as intelligent, reliable, and deeply loyal. His fellow soldiers in the 19th Special Forces Group trusted him implicitly, calling him the kind of man who would never let you down in battle or in life. Jennifer, in contrast, was often described as friendly but reserved, a woman who seemed comfortable in the role of military wife, keeping the home together while Matthew served his country to the outside world. They were a family to admire, 3 children under the age of 12. The couple's marriage had deteriorated into something toxic, a cycle of accusations and recriminations that friends would later describe as a time bomb. What no one suspected was that Jennifer, the seemingly devoted wife and mother, was harboring secrets that would eventually unravel everything. Her choices would destroy not only her husband's life, but also the stability of her own children. And in September 2024, the truth that had been lurking in the shadows would come crashing into the light. Matthew Johnson was not an ordinary man. At 51 years old, he had given more than a decade of service to the Utah National Guard's elite 19th Special Forces Group. He had seen combat, traveled the world, and earned the respect of his peers through bravery, intelligence, and unwavering reliability. For him, duty and family were inseparable. Jennifer, at 42, played her role as wife and mother with apparent devotion. She managed their upscale home in Cottonwood Heights, a property worth over $1 million. 2 neighbors, they were the picture of suburban success, kids playing outside, a strong father figure, and a mother always nearby to help with school events or community gatherings. At church events, Jennifer smiled politely and spoke of the children's milestones. Matthew was often praised as the kind of husband who worked hard and provided stability. Family, friends recall barbecues, dinners, and laughter, a life that many in their circle quietly envied. Neighbors and friends believed the couple seemed happy just weeks before tragedy struck. The Johnson-Gledhill household was no exception. While Matthew's career represented honor and sacrifice, it also meant long absences and strains on the marriage. Jennifer was left to manage the home and children, and while some spouses thrive under such dynamics, Jennifer seemed increasingly restless. Beneath her soft-spoken exterior grew resentment, volatility, and an appetite for control. Behind closed doors, the perfect life was fraying. Arguments simmered into shouting matches, texts laced with insults, and behaviors that pointed not to harmony, but hostility. And yet, to outsiders, the family's mask remained intact. This contrast between image and reality would later shock those who thought they knew the couple. Because the truth was, the Johnson-Gledhill marriage wasn't a dream, it was a slow-burning disaster waiting to explode. The first visible cracks emerged in the summer of 2024. Court documents later revealed that by July, divorce was already on the table. The couple's relationship had reached a point of dysfunction that no amount of appearances could hide. In August, Jennifer went to court, seeking a temporary protective order against Matthew. She painted herself as a fearful wife in need of protection. But when 3rd District Commissioner Russell Minus reviewed the evidence, he saw something very different. The videos Jennifer submitted did not show a terrified woman, but instead captured her as confrontational and unafraid. The commissioner noted that her text messages were often berating, belittling, and demeaning, if not outright goading Matthew into a violent response. The protective order was dismissed. "Commissioner, Minus called their marriage highly dysfunctional, warning that divorce should have been pursued. Long before matters escalated, his ruling would later feel hauntingly prophetic. Matthew, meanwhile, had grown increasingly unsettled by Jennifer's behavior. He began sleeping at a National Guard facility rather than at home, confiding to close friends that he was worried about his safety. To one longtime friend, Kevin Thompson, Matthew admitted that he had accepted the need for divorce. "It's time to move on," he said, a statement that revealed not only resignation but also hope for a fresh start. The cracks in the marriage had widened into a canyon, and Jennifer, rather than retreating, prepared to take a step from which there would be no return. Amid the unraveling marriage, Jennifer sought refuge not in reconciliation, but in another man's arms. In her mind, he represented freedom, a way out of the life she no longer wanted. But to Matthew, this betrayal was a final straw. By September 19th, just 2 days before the murder, Jennifer made a gesture that would later prove crucial in court. She showed her lover a Glock 19X, casually displaying the weapon as though it were a toy. Military families often own firearms, and at the time, he thought little of it. But prosecutors would later argue that this was her way of signaling what was to come. The affair itself became the key to unraveling the case. For Jennifer, the affair was not just a side note, it was the motive, the fire that fueled her deadly plan. While Matthew was plotting a divorce and confiding in friends, Jennifer was plotting murder. She arranged for their children to spend the night with her parents, ensuring they would be out of the house when her plan was carried out. The stage was set. Jennifer was living 2 lives, one as the mother of 3 and respectable wife, and another as a calculating woman who believed she could rid herself of her husband and pursue passion with someone new. What Jennifer didn't realize was that her double life was about to collapse under the weight of her own choices. September 20th began like any other day, but by nightfall, everything had changed. Matthew had discovered the full extent of Jennifer's affair, and what began as a heated argument spiraled into a deadly confrontation. According to Jennifer's later confession, Matthew confronted her in their bedroom. His voice was raised, his anger roars of betrayal and mistrust colliding in one stormy night. But Matthew, exhausted and perhaps unwilling to continue the fight, eventually went to bed. It was in those vulnerable hours, when Matthew was asleep, unguarded, that Jennifer made her choice. She retrieved his 9mm handgun and fired a single, fatal shot to his head. In an instant, the man who had served his country, loved his children, and planned for a new chapter in life was gone. But murder was only the first step. What followed revealed Jennifer's cold calculation. She placed Matthew's lifeless body into a rooftop storage container, sliding it down the stairs before loading it into the family's minivan. She smashed his phone, ensuring no immediate trail could trace him. Then she drove his truck to a nearby neighborhood, abandoning it to make it look like he had left voluntarily. The cover-up was meticulous. She bleached the walls, scrubbed carpets, and ordered a brand new mattress. Just days later, the master bedroom, once the heart of their home, was transformed into a crime scene disguised as normalcy. Jennifer fell into that minority, methodical, deliberate, and convinced she could erase her crime. But her biggest mistake came not in the act itself, but in her arrogance, because within hours, she would reveal everything to the one person who could bring her entire plan crashing down. 4 days after the murder, Jennifer Gledhill carried herself as though nothing had happened. She attended to her children, sent messages to friends, and played the role of a normal wife in mourning. But to her secret lover, she could not resist the urge to confess. Late at night, in a hushed but disturbingly calm tone, she revealed what she had done. "I took care of it," she told him. The man, stunned, pressed for details. Jennifer described shooting Matthew while he slept, hiding his body, and trying to erase every trace. Her words were chilling, not those of a grieving widow, but of someone who believed she had executed a plan. The lover knew he had to act. He began recording their phone conversations, collecting piece by piece the evidence that would later become crucial in court. In those recordings, Jennifer sounded disturbingly casual, even proud. At one point, she admitted that Matthew's body would never be found. Her voice was steady, almost emotionless. For investigators, these calls became a window into Jennifer's psyche. They exposed her lack of remorse, her manipulation, and her reliance on others to protect her secret. The very man she trusted with her darkest crime ultimately became the reason her lies began to unravel. When police arrived at the Gledhill home, they immediately sensed something was wrong. The air smelled sharply of bleach. A brand new mattress had replaced the old one, though Jennifer had no convincing explanation for why. Forensic teams began their work under specialized lighting. Faint blood traces appeared, drops that had seeped deep into the floor and walls, despite Jennifer's frantic cleaning. In the garage, investigators discovered a large plastic storage container. Inside were remnants of blood that DNA confirmed belonged to Matthew Johnson. Detectives pulled GPS data from Jennifer's vehicle. It revealed suspicious trips into remote areas of Utah on the night Matthew disappeared. Surveillance footage and neighbor testimonies placed Jennifer outside the home in the early hours, alone and hurried. The recordings from her lover, combined with this mounting forensic evidence, left little room for doubt. Jennifer was arrested on charges of aggravated murder, obstruction of justice, and desecration of a human body. But she was not the only one facing legal trouble. Her parents were also accused of helping her cover up the crime, removing items from the house and misleading investigators. It seemed the facade of a respectable family was collapsing piece by piece, exposing betrayal at every level. Despite overwhelming evidence of Jennifer's guilt, one heartbreaking piece remained unresolved. Matthew's body was still missing. Search teams scoured miles of rugged terrain, guided by GPS coordinates and Jennifer's known routes. Dogs, drones, and volunteers, including Matthew's military comrades, joined the effort. They combed through canyons, forests, and remote dirt roads. Yet, day after day, no discovery was made. The absence of Matthew's body intensified the grief of his loved ones. His fellow soldiers described the anguish of not being able to give their brother-in-arms a proper burial. His children, too young to understand the details, were left in painful uncertainty. Without a body, the case carried an extra layer of haunting mystery. It was not only a murder, it was a vanishing. For Matthew's family, closure remained just out of reach. Suspended between hope and despair, the courtroom became the stage where Jennifer's double life was finally exposed. Prosecutors laid out the evidence: the gun, the bleach, the GPS trails, the recordings of her own voice admitting to the crime. Jennifer sat expressionless through much of the testimony, offering little reaction as her lover described how she calmly confessed to murder. The jury listened intently, their faces darkening as each piece of evidence built a picture of a calculated act of betrayal. The defense argued stress, manipulation, and emotional instability, but the sheer weight of the evidence overwhelmed these claims. Jennifer was denied bail, deemed a danger to society. Her parents faced their own charges of obstruction, accused of protecting their daughter rather than seeking justice for their son. And hanging over the entire trial was another disturbing detail: Jennifer's attempt to claim Matthew's life insurance, even after his disappearance. This case forces us to confront painful truths about domestic violence and spousal homicide. Studies show that in the US, nearly 1 in 5 homicide victims are killed by an intimate partner. Women are more often the victims, but men, like Matthew, are not immune. Why do spouses kill? Experts point to patterns of control, entitlement, and hidden rage. Jennifer's behavior, as revealed in court, matched traits often linked with narcissistic personality disorder. She displayed an alarming lack of empathy, an obsession with personal gain, and a chilling ability to detach from reality. What makes such cases so insidious is the outward image. Friends and neighbors believed Matthew and Jennifer had a stable, enviable life. Behind closed doors, however, Matthew had already filed for protection, signaling how dangerous his home life had become. His warnings were tragically ignored. This story is not just about one murder, it is about the silent epidemic of domestic violence that hides behind smiles, family photos, and suburban homes. It is a reminder that even the perfect family may be hiding fractures too deep to see until it's too late. Matthew Johnson was far more than a name in a headline. He was a soldier, a husband, a father, and a man whose life was taken far too soon. His story is not just about the horror of his death, but also about the quiet dignity with which he lived. He served his country, he cared for his children, and he tried, desperately, to protect his family even as cracks began to form behind the walls of his home. The tragedy of Matthew's murder is compounded by the innocence of those left behind. His children will grow up without the steady presence of their father. Birthdays, graduations, weddings, all will carry an empty chair where Matthew should have been. Justice, in a legal sense, can punish Jennifer and those who chose to protect her lies, but no sentence, no verdict, can undo the damage. The courts cannot bring back Matthew's laughter, his quiet strength, or the way he lit up the lives of his comrades and friends. That is the cruelest truth of all. Justice may convict, but it cannot restore, and still, the most haunting detail remains: unsolved. Matthew's body has not been found. Somewhere in the vast Utah wilderness lies his final resting place, hidden by the very person he once trusted most. This absence is a wound that refuses to heal. His family cannot visit a grave, cannot lay flowers, cannot whisper their goodbyes. Instead, they are left with silence, an ache that time cannot erase. This case forces us to remember that evil is not always a stranger lurking in the dark. Sometimes, it lives within the walls of a home. Sometimes, it is the hand you once held, the smile you once trusted, the person you once loved. That reality is chilling, but it is also necessary to face, because awareness can save lives. Matthew's legacy deserves to be remembered, not as a victim of betrayal, but as a man of service, loyalty, and love. His story is both a warning and a call to value those we hold dear.